I can't believe it's already been a year since the PlayStation 5 was released. It's been a road full of ups and downs, lefts and rights. If you ask me, Sony's done almost as much wrong as they done right this past year. All that being said though, it feels like just yesterday that I was counting down the days to the PS5 launch. I remember being even more excited than I was for the PS4. Every day I would check my shipment to make absolutely sure I was going to get my console on day one, and it almost didn't happen, no thanks to Walmart. I still remember that feeling in the air driving home with the box when I finally got my console. I even still have the unboxing video saved from that night. It was just an overall special day that I probably won't ever forget. But enough with all the sappy stuff, let's get back to the topic at hand. Did the PS5 actually live up to the insane hype it created in its first year? The answer is actually a little more complicated than you think. For everything good that it does, there seems to be some sort of caveat preventing it from living up to its full potential. This console is very much a yin and yang, positive and negative type of deal, which sort of fits considering the color scheme of the console. I don't think there's any question that the PS5 has put up monster numbers sales wise. Believe it or not, despite the shortage of parts, PS5 is currently outpacing the PS4 in units at this point in their respective timelines, which is pretty impressive considering all that's going on right now. In PlayStation 4's first year, counting from its launch November 15th, 2013 to November 14th, 2014, it was reported that PS4 worldwide sold 13.5 million units. We don't have the current up-to-date sales numbers for PS5 yet, but it was reported in October that the PS5 is already at 13.4 million units sold worldwide. This is pretty insane considering we are still in a pandemic with a huge parts shortage. I can only imagine what the updated sales numbers will look like when we get the November report after the Black Friday and holiday rush. For future reference, it was reported on January 4th, 2015 that 18.5 million consoles were sold. 18 million was Sony's goal for sales by the end of this year, and at this pace, it's gonna beat that easily considering it still isn't easy to obtain one. Now you can't talk about sales without addressing the elephant in the room, that dirty S word that seems to be everyone's reason for not being able to get a PS5 yet. Are scalpers really the ones gobbling up all the PS5s, preventing people from paying retail price for one? This is actually a complicated answer where personal interpretation comes into play until Sony themselves release some sort of data regarding active PS5 users. My personal thought is that the issue isn't as common as people believe. It was reported that approximately 10 to 15% of consoles were resold as of January 2021. We haven't had an official update on that estimate since then, but I can only imagine that number has gone down significantly since it's easier to get one now than it was a year ago. Another thing that supports this belief is how the retailers have been selling these consoles. As frustrating as it is, a common action for retailers putting these consoles in stock is packaging them in bundle deals. These bundles usually go for around $700 to $750 and include some sort of games or extra controllers. They even limit the customers to one per transaction when checking out. Scalpers are less likely to pay $750 for bundles and then resell them around that same price. All that being said though, if you ask me, scalping was a huge issue at launch and that problem isn't yet gone. but it's not as common as people want you to think. Just think about how many people are actually trying to get a PS5 at the same time as you as soon as it gets in stock. That, combined with the part shortage and Sony not yet being able to meet demand, is a bigger reason why consoles sell out almost immediately. It's also important to remember that if you don't buy from scalpers, they lose money. As Sony is able to stock more consoles, the price on reselling continues to go down. So if you're able to wait, just leave those scalpers hanging out to dry. Something Sony has gotten right for as long as I can remember with each PlayStation console are the games. And while I certainly have issues with the way they've been handling certain things, the games are no doubt impressive up to this point. The first game I bought on PS5 was Spider-Man Miles Morales, and right from the jump, playing the game in performance mode wowed me with how smooth the game looked at an impressive 60 frames per second. The original game on PS4 already looked impressive in 2018, but Miles Morales took it to another level. This wasn't even a PS5 exclusive game. This game definitely set a standard that I would expect all other games to meet as far as performance and graphics. I never wanted to play another game at 30 frames per second again after Miles Morales. I'm glad to say this standard has been pretty much met across the board by first and third party developers. Most games to this day are able to run at 60 frames per second on PS5. Some games are even able to perform at 120. Games like Destiny, which was unplayable for me on PS4, look stunning on PS5 in 60 frames. I've even had some people tell me that they can't play games in 30 frames anymore after experiencing PS5 games at 60. Even Insomniac, who set this new standard, was able to update Miles Morales to support ray tracing at 60 frames per second. The next major PS5 exclusive game to come out was Returnal in April 2021. Going in, I knew nothing about Returnal besides it was created by Housemarque. They developed the PS4 launch title Resogun, which I absolutely loved. This game took it even further than Miles Morales by basically having 0 loading screens. I felt like I could boot the game up from the main menu in 30 seconds and be right into the action. There were times I would boot up the game, then pick up my phone to scroll Twitter for a bit, but the game was already fully loaded before I could even open the app. It was pretty mind-blowing that the PS5 could load a game so visually impressive this fast. I didn't even mention how amazing this game played too. It just might be the best example to this day of how a game can feel next gen to play, but that's something I'll get into a little deeper later. And of course, I can't talk about some of the best PS5 games without mentioning my personal game of the year for 2021 so far, which is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Like Miles Morales, Insomniac put a performance ray tracing mode that runs at 60 frames per second. It's hard to believe that games already looked as good running at such a smooth frame rate with basically no loading screen. I can only imagine what games will look like once developers are finally comfortable with the hardware. I haven't talked about every game that's out on PS5, but the common theme with them is that they all have some sort of option to run games at 60 frames per second. While graphics on the games that launched for this generation isn't as big of a jump as it was with previous generations, the real next-gen experience for PlayStation 5 is the performance by far. This becomes really apparent when PS4 games receive next-gen updates that increase the frame rate. It makes games that used to be unplayable because they were stuck at 30 or even unstable frame rates feel amazing. Once you upgrade to a PS5, you really can't go back to a PlayStation 4. Looking ahead at the future of games we're getting is so exciting. At the most recent PlayStation showcase, we got a bunch of exciting games revealed that I can't wait for. Insomniac is still putting out banger after banger, and they don't seem to be stopping. They just revealed Spider-Man 2 and a Wolverine game. Santa Monica Studios getting ready to release God of War Ragnarok within the next 2 years, which I can't wait for, and Horizon Forbidden West is just around the corner. It's an exciting time to be a PlayStation fan. With all those positives said though, not everything is all sunshine and rainbows with the PS5. There's been a continuous point of contention between PS5 and PS4 owners with how Sony is handling the transition between the generations. Before the launch of the new consoles, Microsoft came out and admitted that all their first-party games would also be coming to the Xbox One. This was met with a lot of negativity and pushback from gamers, thinking that Microsoft was making a huge mistake holding back their next-gen games so that they can run on the previous generation. Almost immediately after this, Jim Ryan, Sony Interactive Entertainment president and CEO, came out and did an interview with some of the games media, reassuring fans that Sony believes in generations and that they aren't interested in releasing upcoming PS5 games on the PS4. This seemed to be a direct response to what Microsoft said about their first-party games. As we know by now though, this quote from Jim Ryan turned out to be misleading, as they actually pretty much had the same philosophy as Microsoft the entire time. Yes, Sony released some games that are only on PS5, but those have only been far and few between. The only PS5 exclusive games to launch with the console were Demon's Souls, which is a remake of a PS3 game, and Godfall, which, let's be honest, doesn't count. We didn't get another PS5 exclusive game until May with Returnal and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in June. And with those games already released, we don't even know when we'll get the next PS5 only game. When the PS5 games showcase happened last year, we were led to believe that these games were PS5 only. There was no PS4 symbol anywhere to be found on any of these games. Games like Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok were thought to be PS5 exclusive, only for Sony to slyly reveal that they're also releasing on PS4. Sony led us to believe that the PS5 would be rich with exclusives when that wasn't the case. A lot of PlayStation fans that bought into the PS5 day one felt lied to and misled, all because of purposeful miscommunication by Sony. Another pain point with the new gen is the pricing of PS5 games. Personally, I don't mind the $10 increase from $60 to $70. Games these days are massive and require a bigger budget than ever, though I can see why some people would be opposed to the new price, considering publishers sometimes push out broken and unfinished games and expect customers to pay for it. It can also feel really gross to pay $70 for a game and then have microtransactions waved around in your face, begging for more of your hard-earned bucks. It doesn't help that right after the new console's release, Cyberpunk ended up happening too. Talk about poor timing. But whether you are for or against the price increase, I can understand both sides of the argument. What I have more of a problem with is Sony charging for PS5 ports of PS4 games like Ghost of Tsushima and Death Stranding. This is such an insane thing Sony is doing, and it's so weird that some PlayStation fans are defending this. The fact that you have to pay $10 minimum for the PS5 versions of these games is just so inexcusable. It's worse for Ghost of Tsushima because you have to pay $30 since the upgrade is also locked behind the DLC, which is already $10 more expensive than the PS4 version. They just recently announced an Uncharted PS5 port, and I can imagine it'll be the same anti-consumer practice on that as well. Imagine if on PC you had to pay $10 to be able to change your graphics settings in-game. Now imagine if a developer forced you to buy their DLC to get that ability. Another recent thing that Sony caught a lot of flack for from gamers is the upgrade plans for Horizon Forbidden West. They revealed that the PS4 version would be $60, the PlayStation 5 version is $70, and that there would be no way to upgrade from the PS4 version to the PS5 version unless you purchase the $80 special edition of the game. And to make things worse, they promised that the upgrade would be free since it was a launch title. Sony went on to honor the free upgrade promise eventually, but the fact that they were trying to be slimy and lie to the customer's face again is just super gross. All of this is made worse when you look at how Microsoft is handling upgrading a game to the next gen version. On the Xbox Series X, if you download a game that has a next gen version, it will just download the best possible version automatically without the user having to figure out which version it is. This is handled the opposite way on PS5, where it used to download both versions of the game and it was hard to tell which version you were booting up. Now it's a lot easier to tell, but my question is, why is there even an option to download the PS4 version of the game if the PS5 version is available to you? It's sort of embarrassing for Sony to see how poorly handled some things are when it seems much easier for Microsoft. It may seem like I am sticking on the negative aspects of how the previous year has been, but overall, I think the previous year has been pretty good for PlayStation games. All the misleading communication aside, we got some pretty good games this year. If I did a top 5 games of the year, at least 2 PlayStation games would make the list. Once we finally start getting those PS5 exclusive games, the future will start to look very bright for this generation. One of the most exciting aspects of a new generation of gaming consoles is seeing all the new features and technological advancements we'll make for the next decade. The jump from PS3 to PS4 allowed games to regularly run at 1080p and output amazing graphics. It's pretty bizarre to see how good games looked on PS4, considering the hardware was already pretty outdated before it even launched. While the jump to PS4 to PS5 isn't as impressive graphically, we're seeing the same amounts of stride on the back end of games. I already touched on it a bit, but I can't stress enough how good games feel running at 60 frames per second minimum. The average consumer won't think they care before trying it, But once you start playing games like this regularly, it's really hard to go back. The same could be said about the speed of the SSD inside the console. I can literally load up games from the main menu before I can even send a text message, and that's so impressive. My games don't even load that fast on my PC. It's exciting to imagine how developers can utilize that speed in games a few years down the line. The PlayStation 5 launched with a decision Sony hasn't made since the original console in 1994. The controller included in the box was not called a DualShock, it was called DualSense. This change was made to emphasize just how important the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers are to Sony for the PS5. There was also a huge effort to make the design of the controller and the console really distinct compared to previous iterations. They gave it this really sleek white look that was really minimalistic. It takes some time for the design of it to grow on you, but you really appreciate it after a while. My only complaint is that the white can get dirty very easily if you don't regularly clean and take care of the controller. The higher definition vibrations in the controller can make it feel like you are really driving through mud or walking through grass. When you're shooting a bow, the triggers start to tense up as if you're actually pulling on a bowstring. There's no question why they replaced the word shock to sense with this new controller. And if you ask me, this is the most next-gen feeling feature of the console that is immediately noticeable when done right. When someone I know gets a PS5, I always tell everyone the first thing they should do is play Astro's Playroom. This was a game that was designed to show off the potential of the DualSense controller, and it delivers in every way. It's really hard to describe how cool this is without just placing the controller in your hand and telling you to play it yourself. Some games capitalize on the technology in the controller by simulating the trigger to act as two buttons. In Returnal, pushing down the right trigger only halfway lets you fire the gun like you normally would. Pushing down the trigger all the way acts as a secondary fire option for each weapon. The trigger has a slight resistance at the halfway point, preventing you from accidentally firing the secondary fire. My first time experiencing this was pretty insane. There are other games that utilize features like this, such as Ratchet & Clank, but Returnal and Astro's Playroom really show just how far developers can take these controller features in the future. And it doesn't seem like this will be something forgotten and underused like the touchpad in the DualShock 4. Even third-party developers are starting to utilize these features, which is pretty surprising. Usually it's hard to get third-party developers to buy into these features, especially if they don't benefit the other console, but it's definitely exciting to think about how developers will use DualSense to their advantage in interesting ways further down the line. Another underrated feature that I don't see talked about as often are the game cards. When Sony first talked about this, I just waved it off as a feature that I would never use. Game cards are the first thing you see when you press the PS button while in a game. These cards have a lot of uses depending on how the developer wants to utilize them. When playing a game like Kena, I use these cards to help me through a puzzle whenever I got stuck. In Ratchet & Clank, you can use the cards to help you find collectibles if you don't feel like looking for them yourself. In Returnal, you can use the cards to see how many collectibles in a biome you still need to collect. They're small things, but they really enhance the experience. Now I don't have to pull my phone out and open YouTube and find a video for these things. I can access it with just the press of a button. Another nice touch is that there's a toggle in the PlayStation 5 settings that'll avoid spoilers for you in the game cards. This is something I actually hope developers start to utilize more as the generation progresses. As much as I love PlayStation games, one thing no one can argue is that one of PlayStation's weaknesses was their software ineptitude compared to the competition, and that's honestly still the case with the PS5. Don't get me wrong, the PS5 has some amazing software features, but there are just as many head-scratching decisions that sort of hinder the PS5. One thing we made fun of Microsoft for was them marketing Smart Delivery as a next-gen feature. Smart Delivery was a system I talked about earlier, where Xbox will automatically install the best possible version of a game depending on what console you're downloading it on. This is not the case with PS5. You have to manually install the PS5 version of every game. Another underrated aspect of Smart Delivery was the ability to automatically transfer your saves when you upgrade to the next gen versions of games. PlayStation has a system for this, but it's so needlessly complicated that it boggles my mind on how no one at Sony saw the problem with this when testing the console. For example, when upgrading to the PS5 version of Avengers, you have to download the PS4 version of the game, upload that save to the cloud, download the PS5 version of the game, and download your PS4 save on the PS5 application. The same steps have to be taken when upgrading to other PS5 games too. Why is the process so complicated? On Xbox, everything just works without you having to even worry about it. Sure, it's a minor inconvenience, but these little things start to pile up. If Sony can iron out some of these kinks, it would make the console so much better. So I've talked about everything Sony has done over the past year, but there are still some things I would personally like to see Sony do to improve the console even more. First on the list is to clean up the process of upgrading PS4 games to the PS5 version. Just make it as simple as the Xbox Series X and transfer the saves without you having to do any manual uploading. There were a few PS4 games I no longer had the saves for, so when I upgraded to the PS5 version, I had to restart the game entirely. Another thing I would like to see is 1440p support. This is something the Xbox Series X also already has. 1440p is a resolution that many gamers feel is the sweet spot for resolution and performance. It's sharper than 1080p, but it can allow for higher frame rates than 4K resolution currently allows. I hate to keep digging in the Xbox bag, but another feature I really want to see is quick resume. The ability to switch between games instantly would be so appreciated, but this one isn't very high on my totem pole compared to others. Lastly, and honestly the feature I want the most, is backwards compatibility with PS3 games at the very least. The only way to currently play PS3 games is streaming them through PlayStation Now, and that isn't even ideal because you need a great internet connection and there are a lot of holes in the PS Now catalog. If Sony isn't going to do full-on PS3 backwards compatibility, I at least want more PS3 additions to PlayStation Now. Please Sony, just let me live my dreams and allow me to play Resistance 1 and 2 again. Like I said before, it's been a pretty hectic year full of ups and downs. There have been times where I've been frustrated with Sony's decisions, and times where I'm more excited for the future of PlayStation than ever before. So after all the hype, was the PS5 even worth it? Is it worth fighting tooth and nail trying to order a console before other people can snag one before you? If you want my opinion, I think it depends on what you as a customer value more. If you're looking for a console that will improve the games you already own and make them play even better, there's no question the console is worth the price. Like I said before, once you start playing games made for the PS5, it's so hard to go back to PS4. If you're looking for games that you can't play anywhere else that utilize the full potential of the PS5 though, maybe you're better off waiting and just keep playing what's already out on your PS4. I would be lying if I said it wasn't disappointing that the majority of games on PS5 are also on PS4. If you already have a PS5, what has impressed you the most about the console? What features are you looking forward to seeing Sony add? And if you're still on the fence about getting a PS5, besides it not being in stock, what's keeping you from buying it right now? Lack of games dedicated to the hardware or something else? Let me know in the comments below because I'm pretty interested to see how everyone's experience differs from mine. Hopefully by next year, Sony can start to really maximize the potential of the console and we can get some pretty amazing experiences like we did on PS4. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. It would really help out the channel and I'd greatly appreciate it. Until the next time.